Quarter 1 help video number 5, ecosystem roles assignment. Let's go on ahead and get started. So, looking here on week 5, which was October 5 through 9, you had an assignment that went over the concepts of what the ecological roles were and how to identify them. And at the very end, there was one of those very important performance quizzes that some of you might be missing. It was another one of those 5-point quizzes. So, let's get into this. Once again, this is another assignment that was in Google Slides. I tried to keep everything on 1 or 2 mediums to keep from having too many things being thrown at you, right? I was trying to make Quarter 1 simple. So again, I apologize for using slides so much. That's going to change in the coming quarters. So in the beginning of the assignment, I give you the definition of what each of these things are. So when I talk about primary consumers, they only consume plant matter. They don't eat anything else. So if it eats an egg or it eats a bug, it's no longer primary. It has moved into the secondary consumer realm. So secondary consumers, they eat things that move. So if it moves, well, and you eat it, you're a secondary consumer. If you eat stuff that just sits there in the ground, i.e. plants, well, then you're a primary consumer, right? And then, you know, there's some other stuff here for you to read about. So I give you the definition straight up. I give you an example of where these things fit on the ecosystem, the energy pyramid here. And I even give you a video that talks about that energy pyramid. So the first step for this assignment, which comes in at slide 3, is to watch this Amoeba Sisters video. And as I have done for the other assignments, my recommendation is to click the video and then go down here and hit YouTube. And that will pop you up into a new YouTube window. And the reason you want to do that is because if you start watching this and then you go click to do an answer, this will reset as you guys just saw. And then you would have to go back and find where you left off. And that's kind of a pain to constantly go back and forth. So I recommend hitting play, hitting that button right there. Because as soon as you do this, it resets. All right, so let's talk about these questions. I want to go through these questions really quickly. Why does only 10% of the energy from trophic level 1, that's this one up here, producers, go to trophic level number 2? So why is only 10% of the energy that's locked up down here? Why does only 10% go up here? Where does the other 90% go? That is what you need to answer. And I promise you, it's in the Amoeba Sisters video. Okay, why are organisms on the bottom of the energy pyramid important? What happens if they are lost? This is a 2-part question. Don't just answer one of the 2 questions here. You're answering both. So you would start off, organisms on the bottom of the energy pyramid are important because, and then give me your reason. If we were to lose the organisms on the bottom of the energy pyramid, this would happen. And then you explain what would happen. So again, it's a 2-part answer. You should at least have 2, if not 4, sentences to answer number 2 here. Why are organisms on the top of the energy pyramid? Meaning, what does that mean? Why are they there on the very tip top? What happens if they're lost? Well, that goes into, well, what's the purpose? What purpose do they serve for the ecosystem is what I'm basically asking. So the organisms are at the top of the energy pyramid because, and then you explain. And if we were to lose these organisms, the top predators and secondary consumers, then this would happen. And then you need to explain what would happen. It's pretty straightforward stuff. And then finally, what do organisms higher on the pyramid rely on the organisms on the bottom of the pyramid to do or accomplish for them? If I'm a mountain lion and I go and eat a whole bunch of grass, I'll die. I'll eventually die of starvation. There's not a single vegan mountain lion on planet Earth. And if you tried to feed them a vegan diet, they would first go blind and then they would slowly starve to death. Mountain lions, they can't survive off of vegetation. Grizzly bears, while they eat plant materials, if they went 100% vegan, they would slowly starve to death. They need to take in animal material, right? So what is it that they're relying on things like cows or rabbits or deer to do for them in order for them to survive? This kind of ties into where is all of the energy coming from initially? It's coming from the sun. So I've already given you a bunch of pieces to help answer that question. Think about where the energy initially comes from. Think about what the organisms on the bottom of the food or the energy pyramid here do to get that energy from the sun. And think about what the primary consumers are doing to those producers. And then think about, well, the things on the top of the trophic pyramid, the top predators, they only eat other animals. They don't eat plant materials. So what does that mean that these primary consumers and producers did for those top predators? That's the question you're answering. So I went into a lot of detail there, but I really wanted to clarify what I'm looking for. Okay. Finally, the last thing that you have to do for this, other than take the quiz at the very end, is go through each of these different classes of animals and find me an example of a primary consumer, secondary consumer, and top predator. So on this slide, slide number 5, all of your examples have to be insects. A worm is not an insect. Remember, insects have hard bodies. They're crunchy, right? You pop them in your mouth and it's like eating a Dorito. They have like 6 or 8 legs. A lot of them have wings. Worms don't fit that at all. Now you're like, wait, Mr. Clemens, well, what about caterpillars? Ah, those are larvae, right? And a worm is not a larvae. A worm is a full-grown worm. So worm doesn't work here. Neither does soil, neither does bacteria or plants, because plants are producers, not primary consumers. So you're looking for an insect here that only eats plants. So you need to go and find the actual species name. Don't just type in beetle. Don't just type in grasshopper. I mean, you can type in grasshopper, that's actually more specific. But I want you to go find the actual animal species name. And the reason is because then you can actually figure out what they eat. You can actually just type in grasshopper diet. So let me do that. I'll type in insect primary consumer and see if I can find some examples. If I go out here, butterflies, grasshoppers, insect larvae, these are examples of some primary consumers. So if I go up here and I type in grasshopper diet, it will sit there and tell me what it eats. And look, oh, it only eats plant sources. However, occasionally it might be omnivorous. But for the most part, it's mainly just a primary consumer. So you would put a picture of your grasshopper, you would tell me the grasshopper, and then you'd tell me what it eats. Boom, very simple. Then your secondary consumer, well, that's something that eats other bugs or other moving things, as well as plant sources. But it has to eat something that moves in order to be a secondary consumer, okay? So grasshoppers are not secondary consumers unless you mention some grasshopper species will also eat animal tissue, in which case then you could put that he's a secondary consumer. But don't do that. Go find a better one. There's a lot of bugs out there that eat other bugs, and they're all really cool. So go look those up. And then top predator, well, what's the biggest, baddest bug you can find? Just put an example there. Insects really aren't going to be top predators unless they're in a small, isolated ecosystem where there's not other things bigger than them. So, you know, you got the point. Reptiles, got to do the same thing there. Amphibians are not reptiles. So frogs are not reptiles. They are amphibians. They start their first part of their life in water. Just letting you guys know, a lot of you made that mistake. I get why you think a frog would be a reptile, but they're not. Birds, so give me only bird examples here. It's going to be very hard to find a lot of examples of primary consumers that are birds because most birds are omnivorous. Most birds eat insects as well as plant material. But there's a few out there that are actually primary consumers. In fact, if I come up here and type in birds, we'll go herbivorous birds and see what comes up. Oh, look, a hummingbird would be a good example. And maybe an emu. You actually have to look at some of these. So I know hummingbirds only do nectar, so that would be a good example. But say for an emu, I think they might eat something other than just plant material. So you would want to type in emu diet to confirm before you use it in your example. And it looks like they are secondary consumers because they also eat insects and small vertebrates when possible. So it probably means they eat frogs and mice and stuff when they run in front of them. So this would not be an example of a primary consumer. And I just found out by typing in emu diet. I was going to use that emu, but now I can't. So that makes me want to go use hummingbird instead. Okay, so that's this assignment. You've got to do one for mammals as well. Then you go down here, take a quick quiz. I think it's only 5 or 6 questions. Post your screenshot of your score and the quiz here and turn it in. And that's it. That is the ecological roles assignment. And this was Q1 help video number 5. I hope it was academically and cognitively stimulating for you.